for a couple of minutes. Was so glad. Like we were having such a good conversation that I know it is going to continue right now. But for those of people that may not know who you are, kind of tell us about who you are and what it is that you do.
Well, thank you. Well, hey, family. I mean, that's so dope that folk from all over the country are here with us. I'm
Yes,
here
all over the
in
world. Yes.
Indianapolis, Indiana, is where I reside. Born and raised here. I am I'm in my 20th year of education. 20th year of education, and I'm so proud to say that I still am a true believer that education is the pathway to every child accomplishing their dreams. And so 20 years been in education. I am the CEO and founder of the Center for Empowering Education, which is just the vehicle that I get to express my contribution to the education community. I'm also an assistant professor at Butler University here in Indianapolis, where I am the director of the experiential program for preparing school principals. So I get to help develop the school leaders that help to create emotionally inclusive practices.
So that is awesome. And so you're developing school leaders. Were you ever a school leader yourself, or have you been like in higher ed the entire time?
You want me to tell it all? So let me just tell. Can I have a couple
I'm
seconds
all
to
in
tell the
your business.
story? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Let me spill the tea. So, ironically, this conversation, I just keynoted a graduation before I got on with you, and so I was raised by a single mom in gross poverty here in Indianapolis, right? So my mama was a special education aide, and she raised two boys in what you would consider gross poverty, and so all loved us so hard, makes so many personal sacrifices so that we had access, worked 2-3 jobs just to keep us in the apartment complex for 15 years, where she literally slept in the den so me and my baby brother could have our own bedroom. And so we didn't like school, significant trauma in our life. Both of us, me and my baby brother, have ACE scores of 8, right? So you talk about physical abuse, parents incarcerated, everything that you can imagine, we experienced it, right? Didn't like school, hated school, but we're pretty decent athletes, right? So I had teachers and coaches and principals who I still call mother, father today, who loved me, who helped me to figure out high school. So I graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA. Now y'all can't tell nobody that. Now that's between me and you and the teacher goals community, but
and a million of followers on Teacher Go. Right.
I had to literally make straight A's, go and retake 3 classes in night school, and then I took my SATs 4 times just to get out of high school with a 1.9 GPA. Now, thank goodness, Purdue University here in Indiana gave me a full ride scholarship to go play for the Boilermakers, right? So football was the goal. Okay. Let me go play football, buy my mom a big house. I had a great experience there, played in the Rose Bowl, played with guys like Drew Brees, even worked out professionally, but I got cut. And I ended up right back in the same poverty that I left. And so it was, I realized now that was actually a gift to me, that football did not work out. I found myself in the Indianapolis Public Schools substitute teaching. They put me in some of the most ridiculous classrooms in that district. Now listen, kindergartners going off, high school. I mean, it was the best thing ever happened to me, right? Listen, I fell in love with it. So I drove south Indianapolis about 3 hours for a year to get my master's degree in special ed. Became a special exceptional learner educator. Loved it. One of my mentors said, "You need to go into leadership." I said, no, thank you. I said, I see what y'all do every single day. I don't want no parts of it. But they talked me into it, and I ended up at Butler, where I am currently getting my second master's degree in educational leadership. And I led high poverty schools in Indianapolis. So 2 elementary schools, pretty large, about 950 kids, 2 high schools. Went back to one of my old schools that I attended as a student. Kids just like me, right? Trauma, hardship, goals, talented, just needed to navigate the disenfranchisement of their community so they can accomplish their goals. At the same time, I started my doctorate at Ball State University, and my dissertation topic was the emotional intelligence of teachers impact on the behavior outcomes of African-American male boys. I even investigated all boys from urban communities, right? Mm-hmm. And so providing about 8 hours of emotional intelligence, professional development, significant increase in teachers' emotional intelligence. It was unbelievable, right? I said, oh my goodness. I said, now people ask me all the time, why did you choose boys? Because my baby brother has been in and out of prison for the last 15 years as a high school principal, as a principal period. My babies who were most suspended and expelled were my African-American male students. And now if we look at discipline across our nation, I can imagine internationally, there's still disproportionality with children of color who are being suspended and expelled in school. And so I saw improvement in emotional intelligence with teachers, but I didn't necessarily see the improvement in behavior that I wanted to see as a result of emotional intelligence. So teachers developed the skill to manage emotion, but I identified the gaps, and that's where emotional inclusive practices came from. I didn't address cultural consciousness like I should have. I didn't help teachers to think about how trauma impacts their classroom. I didn't think about equity and how we see discipline or behaviors that manifest in the classroom. Restorative community or restorative practices. Brad Weinstein, one of the experts, how we build community. I don't know about you, but in 20 years of education, 4 universities, 5 degrees, I've never taken a class on how to build a relationship, restore or repair that relationship, right? So all those skills are necessary for us to create the conditions so that we are emotionally healthy. And so I've been providing emotionally inclusive practices, training over the last 2 years, have seen growth. I most recently transitioned from culture and climate director of a district here where we implemented these practices. I was in charge of SEL implementation and restorative practices and have seen significant improvement, but we're just getting started, right? It starts with us. And when we do that, then we really can serve children in healthy ways. That was so much. I hope that wasn't too much.
No, we got all. I said I was going to get in your business tonight, so I definitely did that. And so we are going to take it all the way back and just start off with when you're talking about emotionally inclusive practices, like break it down, like what are you talking about? What are these emotionally inclusive practices that you're talking about?
Well, that's a great question. So let me give the definition. So emotionally inclusive practices is the practice of integrating emotion in every part of the educational experience, right? So I don't know about you, a lot of places here in Indiana, when we came back from COVID, we prioritized academic learning, which we should, but we did not, in many places that I've been in, did not prioritize emotion, the impact of emotion on behavior, right? So when we practice emotionally inclusive practices, we're essentially making emotion normal, making it a conversation about emotion, how we feel, why we feel, the thoughts that bring emotions in our responses to those emotions. We create the conditions in our classrooms so that we can bring those conversations up and educate children and adults about the power of emotion in the classroom. We know that emotion lays the foundation for behavior, right? It grounds us in our interactions with each other. Think about how we engage each other, new individuals in our life, how we maintain relationships, all come through interactions. And those interactions, whether good, bad, or indifferent, oftentimes bring emotion to us. And those emotions cause us to respond, to engage, And so being knowledgeable about those things helps us to improve the quality of those interactions with each other. Now, when I talk about practices, what I was able to do was create a framework where we actually not only introduce emotion, but we also introduce restorative community. Now, I hesitate using restorative practices because when people hear that, they go, program. No. A restorative approach is essentially creating the opportunity and the skill. Think about this. Think about when children learn how to communicate, build community and relationships, and they think about how emotion impacts that community. We have a stronger community, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so emotionally inclusive practices in classrooms includes restorative community and emotion.
Okay.
Another practice is cultural consciousness and emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in a post George Floyd world, right, where we know that creating a sense of belonging and inclusion, diversity, and equity is at the forefront of the work that we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even within same in-groups, socioeconomic status, all those things, culture, have to be a part of the community that we create because it impacts the way we feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emotion, right? I've done training across the country. I often ask groups of teachers who may be from the same in group. I say, how do you feel? Have you ever felt like you were the only individual from your identity, how you identify in a group? You know what I'm saying? Are you the only person of color? Are you the only queer individual? Are you the only and I use my own experience, person experiencing poverty? Those create emotions that sometimes teachers are not thoughtful about creating those conditions, which means we have to prioritize how we educate ourselves about culture and how it impacts our classroom, because sometimes it creates more distance in our community than it does integration, right? And so we want to lift that. Implicit bias, huge. That's another practice. So when I consider the implicit biases that we all have and how emotion can help us. Think about a conversation you had with a person and you could see their facial expression. They were harmed or disrespected. You were able to use your social awareness to identify that facial cue, which should have given you the opportunity to engage and say, hey, did I say something that offended you? I am so sorry. I apologize. Please let me not do that again. Can you please educate me, right? So again, we're still talking about emotionally inclusive classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma, two more. Trauma, there's 6 practices. So trauma, when the media began to show this school that was experiencing trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
I began to cry. I was triggered.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, emotion came so strong. All I could think about was the loss that I had dealt in my own life, thinking about my children.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a child dealing with trauma, it's so important for not only our children, but the adults to understand how trauma has impacted our lives and how trauma lives in our space and how we can leverage emotion to mitigate it, right? So children have interactions all the time that sometimes we think we take personally, but sometimes they're just a manifestation of childhood trauma. And so we have to be educated about it. And then lastly, equity. And so I think equity is so important because if we don't prioritize creating equitable education experiences for all, then we often find ourselves failing children. And so it's so much, but it's not when you create the conditions and make it normal, right? And I've got 15 strategies for adults to develop their emotional intelligence. I have 15 strategies for children to develop their emotional intelligence, but we have to create integration. Otherwise, we'll miss some things. That was so much information. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me stop.
Don't be sorry, because now I want you to give us, you said you have 15 strategies for the adults, 15 for kids. So kind of just give us one. If there was one strategy that someone listening could implement as soon as tomorrow, if they wanted to start developing an emotionally inclusive classroom, what would it be?
That's so good. So the first step, and I love that question because of my teachers and my leaders, right? The first thing we often do is want to fix kids. Kids don't need us to fix them, right? Kids are brilliant, beautiful, they, even with their own challenges, and none of us are perfect. What they need us to do is create the conditions that allow them to become who they were always created to be, which means we have to start with us. So we build our emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is broken down into 4 domains, 4 competencies, 4 skills, 4 skills. Skill number 1, self-awareness. So one strategy, catalog your emotions.
Okay.
So spend a day with yourself. Are you a morning person? What emotions come up for you in the morning? Have you tracked the thoughts that create the emotion about the morning? That will help you to develop greater self-awareness. Understanding yourself under stress when you catalog. Some of us are so stressed, and right now the conversation is, COVID. I don't know that we really know yet scientifically, research-based, what COVID has done to us, right? I think we still have quite a way to identify what those who are doing research currently with the evidence of what COVID has really done to us in isolation and so many facets of what the result of COVID has done. But we got to start with ourselves. Emotional self-check-ins is another. How do you feel after lunch? There are the emotional, Yale has an institute for emotional intelligence. They've identified 100 emotions. Can you believe that? 100 emotions. You could feel anywhere between 1 and 100 emotions in a day. And so when we catalog them, then we can identify what our triggers are, right? I got a teacher I work with, had a kid in this classroom that tapped would trigger him so bad. I said, okay, what do you think that is? What came up for him was he felt like the child was being defiant. Now, this baby had a level of autism. We provided an alternative, a pad for him to deal with his anxiety. Solved, right? So when we know what our triggers are, would take us to those negative emotions, we catalog them, then we can begin preparing, which is the next competency is self-management, right? So I'm aware of my emotions. Now I have to manage them. Now, when we practice this as adults, it's so much easier to model them for children. Okay. Imagine now if we could develop children's emotional vocabulary. Think about that baby. When you say, how you feel? They say, I'm okay. Imagine if we educated them on vocabulary like anxiety, irritation, that they could articulate, hey, I know we're getting ready to go to music class and I don't like music, so I'm feeling anxious. And when I'm anxious, some of the behaviors that I typically demonstrate are non-healthy behaviors, right? I mean, if we teach the babies a vocabulary, they can begin to identify that emotions within themselves. So I gave you 2. So self-awareness and self-management. Now there's a lot of strategies, but those are two competencies that are huge.
And I love the idea of teaching the vocabulary, not just for students, because I even thought of that for myself. And, me as a mother, or as a wife or a sister, or friend, people ask me how I'm doing. My answer is always, "Oh, I'm good," or "I'm okay." You know, those are the standard responses that I just give all the time. And so, as you were speaking, I'm like, I need to build my own emotional vocabulary and then teach my daughter to do the same thing, because her answers are, "I'm good, I'm okay," because that's what she hears me say all the time. So these are great, great. And with any good strategies, any good practices that we try to implement as educators, we always encounter some challenges.
Yeah.
And so, what are those challenges that teachers or leaders tend to face when integrating emotions into the classroom? And then how can they overcome these challenges?
Well, that's a great question. So, one reason why I pair restorative community or restorative practices with emotional intelligence or integrating emotion is because identifying the emotions and learning how to manage those emotions are just the first step. We also have to create the conditions that teach us how to respond when those emotions bring negative behaviors, right? So imagine a child who is misbehaving in class. There was let's just say one of two ways the teacher might respond to that behavior. One is deal with the behavior in the classroom through a restorative chat, or send the student to the office to deal with the principal or the disciplinarian. Now, when they are having the conversation in the classroom, one thing that it allows the teachers to do is help the student be reflective about what interaction has happened. What are the thoughts that you're thinking that evoked an emotion and a behavior? So we help students to map out that cycle, right? Because oftentimes we don't get to see the emotion or the thoughts or the interaction. All we see is the behavior. And so when we create the conditions through conversation that's inclusive of emotion, then we not only help to resolve what happened by providing opportunity for the student to own their decision and repair it, but we also allow them to think about what came up for them and the emotion. Name the emotion. What is it? Anger, frustration, disrespect. And what was your response? Now, let's identify another response, right? That's self-management. And when we are developing our language around emotional intelligence, and I'm saying self-management, when I'm saying what is the emotion that you're feeling, what are the thoughts? Well, when she looked at me, I thought that she was, felt like she was disrespecting me. That angered me. And my response was, I threw a pencil across the room. Okay. That makes sense to me, right? Now, was your response the right response? No, it was not the right response. So first, how are we going to repair it? Let's have a restorative conversation.
Right.
Because we're a part of a community and we need to be all well within the community. Your decision harmed the community. And we love and care for you in this community. And so we need you to correct the harm that you made so that we can restore and continue moving forward. Okay, so all of those parts, because if, think about me, right? Can I tell on myself?
Yes.
I was a fighter as a kid, right? My father was a heroin addict, a substance abuser. He'd come in 3 o'clock with playing his Luther Vandross. And so we were angry. And we grew up in a neighborhood where you had to fight. Until my mom put us in sports, we were able to release that negative energy and frustration. But nobody ever taught me how to map my behavior back to thoughts and interactions, right? And so if I had that education early, because we're talking about skills, and within emotional inclusive practices, there is a personal learning continuum that I use. First step is awareness. Like, you may hear something today and you go, man, that was so good. Or you may, that sucked. Whatever the case, you heard it and you go, okay, there's awareness there. Awareness, then that now is what is your attitude about what you heard? What is your mindset? I've done
Mm-hmm.
professional development across the country. And I have two types of mindsets, typically mindsets that say, you know what, that's something that I can use, or a mindset that says, you know what, I already know that. Because once we identify what the mindset is, we then have to develop the skill, the aptitude.
Mm-hmm.
If we hear a great strategy and skill and we don't practice it, it cannot become applied, which is the last four. A is application in real time. So
Mm-hmm.
we're giving kids emotional, inclusive practices and create an emotionally inclusive classroom, but we don't give students an opportunity to practice,
Right.
and they can't grow in their skill. If we don't give teachers the opportunity to catalog their emotions and practice management in that heated moment, in that trigger moment, then they won't be able to do it. So you have to be able to practice while creating the conditions. So those are challenges. A lot of challenges, right? There's a lot of challenges, but with the right conditions, we can address those challenges in a proactive way.
And I love the thought, or giving not only students the opportunity to practice, but giving yourself the opportunity to practice, giving yourself grace as you do this work can help you further your success with it. And so we have so many questions. I want to make sure we have time for that. But before we get to the questions, if people want to learn more about you, more about the work that you do, more about emotionally inclusive practices, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me at www.briandinkins.com. I love Twitter, so at Dr. B. Dinkins, Instagram, Dr. B. Dinkins, or email me at empower@briandinkins.com. There was a great question. Can I answer that? Rachel asked the question.
Well, before we get to the questions, for those of you that might be listening on the podcast platform, join us live so that you can get your questions answered. But I just want to thank you. And this is how we wrap this interview part up. So I just want to thank you for being here with us. This has been a great interview. And now we are going to jump right into these questions because they are definitely burning up. But thank you, though.
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. And so Rachel's question, are you talking about this one where she says we could honestly spend all day?
I am.
Yes. So how do we justify that? I thought this was a great question too. How do we justify that when we're responsible for test scores and are evaluated on those test scores, and we're trying to get through all of the curriculum before the test? How?
So great question. Great question. It does take time. It does take time. And the beautiful part is now having been a teacher and now an administrator, have led 4 schools and now training principals, I've learned how to be thoughtful in creating the conditions that allow you to do the work that you need to do. For example, the schools who have prioritized teaching emotional intelligence and emotionally inclusive practices, they build it into their schedule, right? So for every school that has prioritized teaching emotional intelligence, they have circle time, they have community time, they develop welcoming rituals at the beginning of every teaching opportunity. They start with community time, right? Now, I have this question all the time. We don't have enough time for that. Okay. If you don't prioritize it, then we have to be willing to deal with the consequences of not prioritizing it, right? I had conversations with 75 principals this year who said, Brian, we prioritize academics and the kids set our school on fire. I said, absolutely right. Absolutely right. They did. Because if you don't, you can't put fish in an empty tank. You have to put water in the tank. You have to warm it at the correct temperature. Then you put fish in. Children are no different. Adults are no different. I'm having conversations and doing this training with principals to say, hey, we've seen great flight from the profession. And research tells us that educators or employees, because this is a study across multiple business sectors, employees typically don't quit their jobs. They quit their bosses, right? And so if bosses, teacher, if principals are not creating the conditions to check on their teachers' emotional health, you'll continue to see the flight because the work is not easy. The work is challenging. And we are the gatekeepers, right? What is the alternative? If we don't do this work, then we'll continue to see children not succeed. And so we are lifeguards, but we have to prioritize our own emotional health. So you have time that you prioritize to teach emotional inclusive practices. You have a team. I do train the trainer. So I train somebody at your building to be the person who implements training throughout the year so that you can grow in your community, because there has to be accountability, right? As a community, we have to commit to prioritizing emotion. And so that's a great question. Creating the conditions.
So I loved your response, but in that response, I want to hear about how do we explain this to parents? We have Michelle that said that sometimes parents don't understand why we discuss emotions. So how do we explain to parents that we're taking time away from academics to work on these emotionally inclusive practices?
I love it. I love it. And you said take away. We don't have to take away anything.
Well, that's the parent is going to say you're taking it away. So how do we educate them? Right. And so here in Indianapolis, we provide short. Now here's a turnoff. We tried 60-minute trainings for parents. They ain't not interested. 5-minute bite size. Let me teach you about emotional intelligence and how it can impact your child at school and your child at home, right? Because believe it or not, our children, the skill of emotional intelligence is both applicable in any setting, right? I'm teaching my children. I'm a girl dad. I have a 9-year-old tomorrow and a 7-year-old. Girls are better than boys. But I teach them emotional intelligence, right? I built their EQ. And so we have to educate parents on the impact, right? Because I know a lot of brilliant people. IQ off the charts. EQ is terrible. And they can't keep a job worth no. Matter of fact, there's research that says people who typically excel at their jobs have high EQ opposed to or compared to IQ. And so the research supports why investing in emotional education should be a priority. I love what Fazia has said. Communicate with your parents, build a rapport, and put yourself in their shoes. So I love that. Great comment. And so I also saw this comment from Santrice, who says, starting with small increments of time and building time upon that as agency is built within the campus is a great way to slowly implement such practices. And from what you're saying, I believe you would agree, but do you have anything to add to that?
I want to be like Miss Jones, Dr. Jones when I grow up. That's absolutely right. I've been in schools who have invested. You see emotion on the walls. You see emotional intelligence word walls. You see emotionally inclusive practices word walls. So we're building vocabulary. Think about the baby who goes home and the mom says, how was your day? My day was great. I feel really good about it. I'm happy. And, I had a test and I felt some anxiety, but I overcame that. And think about hearing that language change, right? And go, oh, you articulated so well how you feel. That's so good. And then we have babies who are now modeling for their parents, right? And that's powerful. My children are in Spanish immersion schools, and so they speak almost fluently. Having been in the school for the last 4 years, I'm learning to speak the language, the beautiful language, just listening to them. So our children have power to impact the homes, but we've got to prioritize it.
I love that. And so we have a question from Mark who says, I look at the curriculum as a guide, but I prioritize depth versus quantity. Is that fair to the students? So How do you feel about that?
Great question, Mark. Well, in my experience, this is just my experience, I have learned that we often prioritize implementation of curriculum rather than adopting the skill within the curriculum as a mindset. And so even for SEL curriculums here in the districts that I served in the last 2 years, we implemented SEL curriculum for children, but we didn't start with the adults, right? And so the adults have this wonderful curriculum from Castle, or not from Second Steps curriculum. They're implementing it, but they don't have the skill themselves because we didn't start building the skill with them, right? And so we really have to help build the mindset of the adults so that they're practicing it, because every part of our life, every part of your day has emotion all through it, right? If you just think about a television show that you watch and an emotion that comes up for you, a horror movie, we go to movies all the time because they make us feel a certain way, right? We eat food, it makes us feel a certain way. And so emotion is just a part of everything that we do. You come home, you hug your spouse, you give them a hug and a kiss. Emotion. Let's make emotion regular, right? Let's really live there, because when we live there, then we can really get to the thing that brings communities together, is how we respond to those emotions when they come up for us.
And so thinking about how we respond to emotions and, really doing this work inside of classes, we had, and I just lost it, but the question was, can this be applied in a sign language class or even in, our gym or PE, health, all of those types of classes? How would you respond to that?
It certainly can be. In fact, it's a framework. It's a way of thinking. Mm-hmm. It can be embedded in any school community, any way that you see fit. And I think that has to be the priority for the school who says, hey, we need to adopt this or something like this. It can't be a boxed anything that you bring. It has to be philosophy that impacts our mindset and gives us the tools to develop the skills that can go in any part of our day. If it's a sign language is how we communicate in the school, then we teach emotional sign language, right? We allow students to think about how they feel and communicate to each other in community. We create community. So it really can be utilized in any way that you see fit. It's skill-based, right? Not program-based or curriculum-based. It's all skill-based.
So yes, Karen, it can be used in your sign language class. Great question. And so the last one I believe that I've seen, Rachel says, we're getting started, but we're not where we should be. It needs to come from the leadership. So for that teacher that understands the importance of this work, but may not feel like they have the support of their leadership, what's some advice or, some tips that they can use in order to get leadership to understand the importance and value of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm sending hugs and love, because oftentimes it's the principal that holds it up, right? I know I was a low skill principal at one time, right? And so I understand. I think that's what kind of helps me in my approach is I start with the principal. What is your philosophy? Where are you? How are you creating the conditions for your entire school community, including your parents, right? But principals are the most isolated individuals in the teacher profession. They have superintendents who they have to serve, directors they have to serve. Then they have to serve their assistant principals, their teachers, their students' families, and the community. And so all these expectations on the principal, got to get test scores, all these things that help us to operate healthy schools or to demonstrate that we are a good school, right? Providing data or research to the principal to say, hey, here is some research. And if you email me, I can send you tons of research that supports why emotionally inclusive practices, emotional intelligence, restorative practices, all these things integrated are great ways to impact our culture and community so learning can happen. Because I bet each of you that is on this call that are educators know what the conditions of a classroom looks like when there is no positive culture or climate or community in that classroom. And so providing that leader with examples, stories, data, research, oftentimes help them to think about how they can accomplish their to-do lists, academic outcomes by embedding. You don't have to take away. You don't have to take away academic time. It can be inclusive in every part of your day. Just have to do it strategically and thoughtfully.
I love that advice. And one of my favorite characteristics of the Teacher Goals community is that they are always sharing tips and strategies. And so while we've been talking, Michelle has shared some great tips. And one of the things she said is that we check in with the mood meter every day. It's okay to be happy, but we also embrace sadness, frustration, anger, being tired or hungry. And I just thought that this was so great. I had to bring it up. So any other strategies or comments like this that you can add to her practice that she shared?
I don't want to take away from it. I love the mood meter.
Yes.
You can download an app literally on your phone. I think it's the work started in at Yale, developing the mood meter, which what it does is it holds you accountable, gives you a reminder, it says, how you feeling? Is this a feeling that you want to sit with, or do you want to turn the page, which is a strategy, right?
Okay, yeah.
Look here, we have the capacity to turn the channel.
Yes.
Just as quickly as you move from angry to joyful, you can go from joyful to we have the power to do that, right? And so what it does is just force you to be thoughtful, checking in. Think about checking in with your babies. I would check in with my children at least 4 times a day. How's your weather? When I do professional development, I always start with, if your emotions or feelings were weather, what's your weather right now? I get thunderstorms. I get sunny and rainy with 70-degree weather. I mean, it's so colorful. And what it does is it allows me to then provide the empathy and the emotional support based on where you are. Oh, Brian, you were sunny and shiny this morning, but after lunch, you said you were in a hurricane. Can we check in? And I'm going to check in before you blow my classroom up, right? Yes. And the reason why you're upset is because Tommy said something rude to you, talking about he going to get, so let's address it. Let's address it now before you blow my classroom up. And all he did was tell me he's experiencing a hurricane. I need the support. He understands how he feels. Now I got him at the emotion. Let me get him before he gets to the behavior.
Yes, and one more strategy that I want to share because it was so good from a LinkedIn user says, every time the bell rings, we take that as a reminder to practice mindfulness. Instead of frantically putting stuff away and rushing to the next subject, to the next class, we stop and focus on our breathing. And I've never heard of this before, and I just absolutely love it. So thank you, whoever you are. Thank you for sharing this because it is great.
That's so good. Mindfulness, self-awareness.
Yes.
You got some pretty dope people on this in the Teacher Goal family.
Yes, we absolutely
you got some. Okay.
Yes, we do. And so we have had such good feedback tonight. I just want to thank you. Janice says, great points to consider. Afsar says, excellent, very informative. We had Odette who said, where can I find this recording after the live? And so if you're thinking about that, number one, it's on every Teacher Goals platform. So